Quick, who is the most expensive signing in Premier League history? Did you say Caicedo? Well, you're wrong. He's 10th. And here's why. You see, the difference between the Premier League now and its first season over 30 years ago is very compelling. Money has been pouring into football, and the Premier League in particular, since the early 90s. And that money back then is not worth the same as it is now, so we need to adjust it accordingly. And where there is money, there are players to be bought. And where there are players, there are owners who salivate and hike the price up no matter what year it is. Players like Wayne Rooney, who was hot property as a young 18-year-old playing for Everton and scoring against the reigning champions Arsenal, killing their 30-game unbeaten run. He's 7th on our list, as his £30 million deal rises above Caicedo to £118.6 million in today's market. Number 3 on our list might be one of Liverpool's biggest regrets, so stay tuned. Some honourable mentions for ridiculous fees must go to Middlesbrough spending over £100 million on Fabrizio Ravanelli, who scored a hat-trick on his debut, helped Borough to the League and FA Cup final, while also getting relegated in the same year, before selling him to Marseille less than 12 months later. Big Duncan Ferguson being bought by Everton for a converted £89 million in 1994, after a 3-month loan deal was made permanent. 2 years later, Everton would then spend an adjusted £85.1 million on Nick Barmby. Yeah. The early years of Manchester City's spending can't be justified as much as their most recent purchases have been. With little success in those late 2000s, a fee of £90 million looked bad for striker Joe at the time, and with the inflated value rising to £51.7 million, it looks even worse now. Robinho soon followed his compatriot to City for £32.5 million, a mental £88.5 million adjusted fee for someone who only scored 14 goals in 18 months in all competitions. Like City, Chelsea have been known to spend a bit of green on players. Since Abramovich, all the way to Bowley, Chelsea have been making suspect transfers like the underwhelming arrival of Andriy Shevchenko. A then British record fee for the iconic Ukrainian, who spent 2 seasons playing at the Bridge and 1 out on loan after his adjusted £111.3 million deal from AC Milan. Chelsea spent an adjusted £94.9 million on Drogba 2 years prior to Shevchenko's transfer, and one of the most clutch football players of all time would repay Chelsea fans with the greatest sporting moment of their lives in 2012. Another successful transfer will come in the form of Thierry Henry, who Arsenal signed in his early 20s for £11 million in 1999. Which is equivalent to $89.9 million in today's market. A bargain for what many people consider the greatest Premier League player of all time. But Arsenal would also crack the top 10 most expensive transfers with the adjusted price of Dennis Bergkamp. The £7.5 million transfer brought the Dutchman to North London from Inter Milan and surpassed Caicedo's transfer with an inflated price of £117.3 million. While the rest of the top 10 is dominated by Manchester United, their spending can be found throughout the list. Robin van Persie's controversial signing would be adjusted from £24 million to £52.7 million for the then 29-year-old reigning PFA Player of the Year. Although the fee was large for a player with 1 year left on his deal, he essentially won the title for United, as Ferguson bowed out of management, pipping their noisy neighbours to the title for the last time, as fans of the Red Devils would have to wait a while for the next title. Post-Ferguson transfers make appearances on the list of most expensive transfers in Premier League history, and they were not as impactful as RVP was. Martial, Mata and Lukaku all took part in United's mediocre era, but would all be surpassed by the transfer fee spent on Roy Keane in 1993. A £3.75 million fee back then would come in at a staggering £94.2 million in the modern era. And while holding midfielders like Rice and Caicedo still top this fee, Keane's 7 Premier Leagues, 4 FA Cups, and the treble-winning season in 1999 confirmed the bargain deal United landed 30 years ago. Starting off United's top 10 most expensive transfers is Dwight Yorke in 8th. His move from Aston Villa to United cost £17.3 million in 1998. With inflation, what for sure will be the most expensive ever transfer from Trinidad and Tobago rises up to £118.2 million. Jumping over Wayne Rooney in 6th and 4th place, respectively, is Rio Ferdinand. His move from West Ham to Leeds in the year 2000 would be surpassed by his move 18 months later to Manchester United for an eye-watering, yet worthwhile, £132.5 million in today's market. Between both of Rio's transfers, we have Paul Pogba, whose world record deal in 2016 helped United bring back the Frenchman to the club that let him go for free as a 19-year-old. The then £89.3 million deal has since inflated to £126 million over the last 7 years. In 3rd place, we have that big regret for Liverpool. After spending big recently to secure a Champions League and Premier League title through Alisson and Virgil van Dijk, The signing of Stan Collymore from Nottingham Forest in 1995 shattered the then English club record fee. The £8.5 million deal has now inflated upwards of £132.9 million for a player who combined well with Robbie Fowler in his first season, but lost the Premiership on the final day to United, and then fell to the same fate as the Red Devils beat Collymore and Liverpool in the FA Cup final a week later. It was the closest Collymore would come to winning a major trophy in his career. The following season, the tabloids dubbed Collymore and teammates the Spice Boys, as he grew out of favour and left Liverpool for Aston Villa. In second place, Juan Sebastian Veron's £28.1 million move rises to £155.4 million in today's football climate. Despite being such a well-known, iconic player of the 90s and 2000s, it is not remembered as one of Sir Alex's greatest purchases, and his time at Manchester United can be understood through his sale to Chelsea 2 years later for a decreased £15 million. And in first place, the signing that broke the British transfer record by so much it was not topped for 3 years after it. It's the Premier League's top goalscorer, Alan Shearer. His £15 million move from Blackburn to Newcastle in 1996 becomes inflated to £222 million. Shearer would spend 10 years at Newcastle and break an almost undefeatable record of 260 goals in the league, but he did not win a trophy during his time at the Magpies. The calculation of the inflation was made by Kieran Maguire and Jason Laws at the University of Liverpool, who calculated the figures in conjunction with The Athletic. Now I need your help to figure out the calculation method, so we can do this with other transfers from around the world. While you figure that out, watch this video on player shirt numbers and why they change them so often.